We're going to talk a little bit about coaches. I'm going to give you guys a couple of options, and I'm going to tell you who has a bigger spring. I think it's going to make for a little bit of a game. I don't want to make it into like a game show with a theme song, but I'll start with you, Andy, because we just heard from Tim last. If I gave you a couple options between Tim Walton and Justin Fry, who has a bigger spring ahead of them to try to sort things out? Tim Walton at the cornerbacks or Justin Fry in the offensive line?
Justin Fry, and I don't think it's close. If you don't have an offensive line, you don't have a team, and you especially don't have an offense. And when you're trying to find a new quarterback, you need to have an offensive line that works with that quarterback, that can protect them, can also block for the run. And I think, he comes in his first year and he inherits so much talent. 3 guys that are off to the NFL draft and maybe the best tackle tandem in all of college football. And now it's about not inheriting, but developing. And it's really going to be up to him, with this new role too of being the run game coordinator, which I think isn't a huge deal. It goes hand in hand with being the offensive line coach, but it is an added responsibility of helping this offense run and developing guys to the point where you can be sure of at the end of spring, do we need to go to the portal? A lot of that's being honest with yourself as a coach, maybe admitting that I didn't develop guys to the point I needed to, or these guys just aren't ready to start. Maybe we need more help. So I think a lot of it takes self-awareness. A lot of it takes just an understanding of what talent you do have and their strengths and weaknesses. It's going to be a much different year 2 for Justin Fry than year 1. I think it was I'm not saying it was an easy year 1, but you come in with a lot of talent there, and now all the eyes are going to be on him. And if that offensive line doesn't work, boy, you're going to have some problems, and there's going to be a big spotlight on him. So it's an opportunity, but it's a big one that he can't let down.
Yeah, last couple of days, I've had stories at LettermenRow.com about Carson Hinsman, about Taygart, Toshbola. We're kind of going through the offensive line room of potential guys who could make a difference. It was kind of strange, Tim, to hear Justin Fry and Ryan Day bring up Carson Hinsman so often. A couple weeks ago when we talked to him, bring up Taygart, Toshbola so often when we talked to him. Kind of eye-opening because there weren't really names that were on the radar as much as some of those, maybe more seasoned guys. But the second-year guys seem to be making a push. That might make it a little easier on Justin Fry, Tim.
Well, yeah, but I mean, obviously, and the point is, like Andy's talking about, this is about development. And obviously those guys were working behind the scenes last year really hard. We know offensive line, once you settle on that starting 5, it's like the 5 fingers in a baseball glove, man. You don't go changing them too much. And if anything, you would like to have seen them, just like, I'm always complaining is not the correct term, but I'm always pointing out, I understand why you can't play guys a lot more than maybe Ohio State does, the backups, meaning in some critical situations. Maybe critical is not the right term. Second quarter of games, when games are still in jeopardy and doubt, but not necessarily the critical moments in the third and fourth quarter when something has to get done. But, you end up paying the price for that a little bit with a developmental. Now, they've got a developmental situation in the early season. Now, they've got a perfect schedule to develop before they play Notre Dame, for example, and what you got Indiana, Youngstown State. I can't remember all the exact lineup there, but the bottom line is they've got to bring those guys have to step up, and of course there are guys who are going to be sitting out the spring or they're going to be looking at, not the least of whom is Jacob James, a guy that they think can contribute at that center spot. So they've got a core there to build from, Donovan Jackson and Matt Jones, and then they go from there. And can I jump into the Tim Walton situation?
A little bit. I was going to steer you a little closer to Perry Eliano, but if you want to talk about the secondary.
I thought he was going to take the one guy, not take the other, like they do on ESPN, even though they don't believe in it.
Go ahead, dive right in.
No, the only difference is what Andy's talking about is Tim Walton's he's going to have 3 guys. If my counting is correct, he's going to have 3 guys who have started games at corner, right? Not the least of whom is the transfer from I'll let you pronounce his name, the transfer from Ole Miss. And but the bottom line is, and of course he's got Denzel Burke back. So, I mean, he's got some stuff to work with there. What they've got to get done, what he's got to get done is maybe change the approach he's taken. I'll just go right into Perry Eliano. Ferrioliano's got is replacing 2 starters, but he's got some guys back. He's got a transfer in the young man from Syracuse, and of course Josh Proctor says he's coming back. And Josh Proctor started a game or 2 last year. I don't remember the exact numbers, but then kind of faded from view to a certain extent. He's got the raw material there to get some things done. But like I was talking to him and Tim Walton during that coaches thing, I'm gonna write about that later this week. Just about, well, what was the problem there? Players who weren't capable of handling certain situations, being put into certain situations there late in the year that cost Ohio State dearly, or was it maybe from a scheme standpoint or a technique standpoint, some things that needed to be changed? And of course, there was some dancing going on there in the answers, et cetera. Bottom line is they don't really want to change too much of what they were playing defensively this past year, was the gist I got from talking to those two plus Jim Knowles. But something clearly has got to get ironed out on that secondary from the standpoint of not giving up the big plays, which is, part and parcel of what we're talking about. So, you would think giving up the big plays, who's your last line of defense on a defense? It's some safety, you think, right? and they've got 3 of them on the field all the time. Well, somebody needs to be back there deep, no matter what scheme you're playing. So I would think I would think you're going to see a little bit of experimentation in one form or fashion, whether it's Jahad Carter. I mean, whoever you're going to look at back there. Obviously, Sonny Styles coming in, stepping up, basically. Kai Stokes, a guy who kind of got lost in the wash. I thought he really flashed in the spring last year. There's a guy that's really interesting to me. So Perry Eliano is going to have to make some really tough, hard decisions through the spring and in the preseason camp.
Couple notes. I'll let you take over, Andy, but a couple notes from me on the secondary. Tim Walton's group had no interceptions last year. I'm trying to find the data still on if any other program didn't have an interception from its cornerbacks. It's not easy information to gather. I think you got to go just program by program and find it out. The Buckeyes had 0 as a cornerback group. So they've obviously got to straighten that out. 4 different players in that room have started games. Jair Brown has 1 start, the game against Wisconsin, along with Jordan Hancock, who was a co-starter, I guess. Denzel Burke.
Yeah, I forgot about Jordan Hancock, yeah.
And then Davison Ignosin. That's the cornerback room, Andy. But the safety room, I asked Perry Eliano during those coaches meetings, do you guys need to work on cross-training? Because there was a lot of times late in the season where Ohio State was caught where safeties were having to act as corners in the open field, and Cameron Martinez flips his hips the wrong way, or Lathan Ransom falls down because he's a safety, not a corner. There obviously has to be a little bit of that cross-training going on. I think Ohio State's going to focus on that. The secondary in general, and this is why I wanted to talk about the spring coaches, I think these 2 secondary coaches in general, Andy, have a huge task in front of them trying to figure out how to make everything run smoothly in year 2 of their system.
Yeah, I mean, clearly that was a big problem in the last 2 games of the season. The reason why Ohio State reset their record for most yards allowed or most yards per play allowed in back-to-back games to end the year. And it was those explosives downfield and the secondary being exposed, but especially the safeties being exposed. And as good at times as Ronnie Hickman was and as good at times as Tanner McAllister was, there were holes in that back end. And now those 2 are gone. And as Tim mentioned, it becomes, well, who's going to step up? Well, Lathan Ransom had a breakout start to the year, not a strong finish. And then you've got Josh Proctor. Will he be that 3rd guy along with Jahad Carter? Maybe, but maybe it's Sonny Styles. Maybe it's Cam Martinez. Maybe we see a rotation. But whatever it is, there's got to be some cohesion because, as you mentioned, Spencer, there was just way too many breakdowns towards the end of the season. I don't know, maybe it is cross-training, but some of those guys you mentioned started their careers as corners. Cam Martinez is a guy that was a corner. If you're playing nickel, you basically are a corner. I mean, a lot of these guys have the skill set and the athleticism. I think it's more of a matter of Jim Knowles putting them in the right places to be successful. And I think there was this allowance of explosives this past season. And Ryan Day talked about how, no, that's not going to happen anymore. And I think that's got to be the change in mindset. It can't be we can allow 5 a game. It should be, no, we're not allowing any. And I think change of where those guys are placed on the field for certain plays. So maybe it's not a matter of their athleticism. Maybe it's just a matter of the scheme and honestly just being in the wrong positions at the wrong times. And then Spencer, I want to pose a question to you. Talking about these coaches and the coaching staff, how fair is it to evaluate a guy like Corey Dennis for this coming season? I know Ryan Day is pretty much the de facto quarterback coach with his experience at the position, obviously being the head man. But given how important this position is going to be and this competition, how can we evaluate Corey Dennis this year?
Yeah, I don't know how you really do that, and I think that's why I kind of, not that I was afraid to bring up that, but the fact that it's a joint effort between Corey Dennis and Ryan Day, and now you add in Ryan Day's not the offensive coordinator because Brian Hartline is, and you're losing Kevin Wilson, who has experience choosing a quarterback. It's such a group effort with that quarterback spot that how do you evaluate Ryan Day on it? How do you evaluate Brian Hartline his first year trying to choose a quarterback as the offensive coordinator? Well, I think all three of them share that. And so I don't think you evaluate Corey Dennis in anything he does as an individual because Ryan Day has his hand in that quarterback cookie jar, because Brian Hartline has a say in what they do in the passing game, because if they're going to do quarterback run, then Justin Fry and Tony Alford have to be involved because they're part of the running game. And so that offensive side, I think, it's a little easier on defense. Tim Walton, you're with cornerbacks. Perry Eliano, you're with safeties. You all report to Jim Knowles, but this is what you do. That offense, though, I kind of lump all those guys in together, maybe except for the offensive line because Justin Fry has such a grasp on what they're doing. But the rest of those guys, I think it's such a group effort that I think it's hard to evaluate Corey Dennis. Tim, do you agree?
Yeah. We'll evaluate that about middle of the season. About whether they brought along a new starter at quarterback, just like everybody wanted to bench C.J. Stroud after his first half as a starter at Minnesota. People, come on, get it. You got to be better than that, people. But, these guys first-year starters are going to make mistakes. They're going to make whoever ends up with the job is going to make some mistakes. They're not going to be as bold with them to begin with as they would be maybe at the end of the year or maybe even next year, as a second-year starter. And I know everybody says they know that, but then people get impatient. I'm talking about fans, even the media, et cetera. Maybe even coaches sometimes get impatient with the fact that, as much as this Cal McCord has been in the program now going on his third season, he's going to make some mistakes as a starter. He's going to be bold where he shouldn't have been. He's going to be timid where he shouldn't have been. And then he's going to get the mix going. Or is it going to be Devin Brown? And of course, where I give him some kudos here, though, I think Tristan Gebbia was a big pickup. And no matter how you lure him to a certain extent. Your coaches have to lure him, meaning Corey Dennis, because there's a guy who's a capable guy who started in Power 5 football, who is basically your third string quarterback. And he might not admit it, but I think he's probably happy in that role because he wants to be a coach down the road, not necessarily the next Tom Brady. And then, of course, Lincoln Keno's will be coming in the summer, the guy they signed. But Tristan Gebbia, the transfer from Oregon State, I think gives them a little bit of a security blanket, if that's the right term, in that room. And also an older guy. Heck, he's almost as old as Keenan Bailey. Not really, but you know where I'm going with that. Like Corey Dennis said, he's almost, it's really funny, the lack of age difference there. But the bottom line is, I think getting him was a major get. So that's a little bit of you're not going to get a guy who wants to be a starter to come into Ohio State this year with Cal McCord having paid his dues, Devin Brown having been considered one of the top quarterbacks in the group coming in 2022 nationally. So I thought that was a little bit of savvy shown by the coaching staff being able to lure him. So I'm already giving them a little bit of a foot in the door of having a pretty good year. But like you said, and Andy talked about too, the fact you've got Ryan Day sitting there roaming now instead of necessarily running the offense is going to give him a lot more time to roam, knock on the quarterback door, go and sit down, and talk. I mean, if you follow my drift. And I think that's going to be as big a deal as anything else, I think, in the spring and in preseason camp and through the summer is having Ryan Day as sort of a wild card coach wherever he wants to go. I would think, considering the quarterback is so huge, and I know that's an understatement, and what you do offensively, no matter where you're playing your game, I would think he's going to spend a lot of time in that realm.
Yeah, and it's a big spring for Ryan Day because of the new roaming and because he's replacing his quarterback. It's a big spring at Ohio State in general. This is a pivotal season, 2023. We can't understate how important the 2023 year is for the Ryan Day era, the Ryan Day tenure, and the Ohio State football program as a whole.